Is this thing recording? Yeah. Hey guys, so welcome back. So today, I was in a party stand and this person started trading me and asked if they could offer for DJ. I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't mind. So, they offered and they had this really long, set of items, like a lot of them. So, I asked them to think about it, but for some reason, they kept coming to me and said, oh, can we trade? Like, we can trade back right after. I honestly just really want to see what DJ looks like with my look and stuff like that. So I started to get really suspicious. I'm like, oh, sorry, I have, like, trust issues and stuff like that. She's like, oh, yeah, me too. And so she just kept saying things like, oh, please, can we do it? Don't worry, I won't scam you. You can call Buddy. You can invite your entire pack over. You can record. I'm like, sure, whatever. And she calls her, so her BFF, as she calls her. And, she comes, and I say, can I please calm down? Because I was really scared because I just got on DJ, like, the other day, and, you know, I didn't really want to, like, risk, losing it because I already lost my DJ once. And her offer was actually really under. But yeah, so we just kind of started talking, and yeah, so I finally said, okay, I'll do it. So I do it. She had all the items except for the rare fur yarn cuffs because those were part of the trade. I have a few photos. And I go over all the items to make sure she doesn't remove anything like the forest or the feather neck or anything like that, or the outback or stuff like that. And she never put furry, so, and guys, that the reason you need to know that is because it comes in at the end. I'm pretty sure I recorded it. So there she is adding all the items. So yeah, and then I accidentally canceled because, yeah, so I just cut here because she was adding all the items. And she goes to make a look. And I'm like, yeah, sure, you can make a look. And so then I go to make a look. And I searched up furry and I didn't realize that she didn't give it. So I'm like, well, I mean, as long as she's trading back, it's fine because, you know. So I was waiting for her to and then her best friend said that she wants to record and send it to Bepper and AJHQ. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I mean, that's fine, because if she does scam me, I'm sending this video to AJHQ and I'm posting this video. So there, she just made her look, and so I trade her. And then that's instead, she forgot to add cuffs. I'm like, yeah, I know, I kind of realized. So, yeah, so I put in all the items, and we start to trade, so I'm just gonna let you guys watch this because I have nothing else to say. So there I am, adding in all the pets. If you guys hear any background noises, that's my dog snoring. Oh yeah, so then she's like, oh, I want to see all your looks you made with them. I'm like, oh, this is one of my looks, because I don't want to cancel because it made me feel suspicious. She's like, oh, I like it. I'm like, can we trade back now, put DJ on? She's like, oh, Jack isn't mine. I'm like, oh, because I got it from the pack run, like, a little while back. And I forgot about it. So, yeah, I put on the gecko instead, and she puts on DJ. She accepts. So I'm like, oh, everything's good. I mean, she better not scam. So I wait, and then, yeah, she leaves. That's exactly what happens. And at that point, I wasn't really upset. I was just kind of like shaking. I was just kind of like in shock. I wasn't really that upset. I was just kind of like in shock. But then it kind of hit me that I got scammed. I didn't cry a lot. I just kind of cried a little because, like, I worked hard for that DJ. And I got a huge undertrade. And I realized it's my own stupid fault. So you guys don't have to blame me. You guys can just blame me however much you want. I'm just asking you guys to, like, repost this video or something. You can remove any sound or something, but yeah. So I just kind of like started crying because I worked really hard on that DJ. It took me over a month to get it. I tried really hard. I went on every day. So it just kind of hit me that I didn't have it anymore and that she scammed me. So she comes into Milkwahi and then she comes back to my den and I'm like, oh good, she's back. And she's like, oh sorry, I crashed. I didn't mean to scare you. And her friend's like, oh, I'll help you trade back up. She's like, I didn't mean to scare you and stuff like that. And her trade requests are off. And she's like, oh, but I'm trying to trade you. I'm trying to trade you and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, I can't trade you. And I'm like, bro, your trade requests are off. She's like, it won't let me trade. So I got sent a body request and I refreshed my AJ. And so yeah, I'm just refreshing my AJ here. Nothing to worry about. Okay, so I go to my den and they're there and I refreshed and her trade requests were still off. And the funny thing is, okay, just watch. And she's like, yours are off. And she's like, no, mine aren't off. But I very much knew they were. So like, at this point, I had already known she'd scam me. I'm like, yeah, she's not giving it back. And then someone else comes, the person's friend's friend. And she's like, oh, my trades say all jammers. And so everybody's like stuttering because like I'm trying to keep in with the video. Because this video is kind of like 33 minutes long. So I'm going to have to cut a lot of it and turn it into pictures. But yeah. And she says she keeps freezing. I'm like, bruh, just trade back. And she's like, I'm literally trying to trade you. I am too. Because if you guys go back, replay the video, you will see that for me it says all jammers. So clearly that means she's lying and she wasn't trying to trade me. So I refresh again and I go back to my dad and they're kind of like scared, like, oh my god, stop refreshing. So yeah. It kind of like hit me that when I actually like kind of like hit me, I started like crying a bit because I was pretty upset after losing my DJ because, oh boy, that took a long time to get. So yeah, I put all my things on trade and then I'm like, oh, select all the items and yes, you can trade me. It's like snowy ... I'm like, yeah. And her friend kept saying, oh, she scammed you and stuff like that. My pack still hadn't responded. I'm like, if you don't trade back, I'm posting this. I'm like, I'm recording, right? I don't, she's like, it's not letting me, I'm serious. And I did not believe that for a split second. So I tell her to refresh, and this is the part where you can tell she is lying. She's a big liar. Because as soon as she comes back, she says she can magically trade me again. And remember when I told you guys that she forgot furry? Well, yeah. That comes in a little time. So she refreshed. She hadn't unbuddied me yet. I was just making a new look because I'm like, well, this is gonna have to be my look. I'm gonna have to stick to it. So she comes back and she can trade me. And I'm like, oh, since you can trade me, can you trade the DJ now? And she's like, hang on, I'm getting like 1 million jamograms. I'm just gonna wait until that happens. So yeah, you just guys keep watching on. And our deal was that if she traded me those, she would promise you gave it back. Because I have photos of that, so just remember that until the end. I'm like, I was like, oh yeah, sure. And then, because I asked her for the rest of the items, and then I'm like, actually, no, I want to trade back. You know, it's my DJ. She shouldn't have to do this. You know, if she actually isn't a scammer, she's got to prove it. She's got to give my DJ back. So yeah, I'm like, so she trades, and then she keeps spamming A, like I did. And she claims that she's getting scared and she wants to like trade back and stuff like that. So I'm like, trade me. Please don't report me and stuff like that. I'm like, then give DJ back. She's like, I don't want to be called out a scammer for nothing. So I'm like, nothing you did. So you see, guys, she can trade now. She traded me, and she's like, can I have? I'm like, can I have DJ? That wasn't the deal. The deal was you give it back, because she said, oh, can I have it for like until tomorrow because I really like DJ. Like, can I have it for a little while? I want DJ. I said I'll think about the trade. Can I just have the DJ? I might do a trade later. She's like, RIP, hold on, I'm getting jams like crazy. I'm like, just trade. And it won't let her add, but she probably didn't even try to add. That's when I just cancel, and I tried trading her again, but she's still busy. She still got her requests off. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna send this to AJHQ, her friend. She's like, I'm like, I can send the video to AJHQ too. And after I canceled, she started acting all like she didn't really care. It's like, I was suspended for 2 weeks for doing nothing. I'm like, nothing. I'm like, we have video proof, so give it back. And she doesn't really care. She's like, well, what can I do? Because I'm not giving the DJ back. It's like, if I get banned, at least I have my other games. I'm like, sure. And that's the point where it hit me that my DJ would be lost if she gets banned. So, yeah. I'm like, give it back. And then she unbuddied her. Because I'm angry. I'm like, And she told me to lock her out. I'm like, no, I want my DJ. It's like, she's a scammer, I know. And I'd be send proof. It's like, everyone thinks I'm someone spare. I'm like, I don't think. And they always report me. I'm like, because you're scamming. So, yeah. I'm like, it was my DJ. And he's like, you're just a dirty scammer. I'm like, okay. That's karma right there. Because they were like apparently best friends or something. So I'm probably not making lots of sense right now. But yeah. And she calls her things like dirty, cold, scammer. I'm like, I'm gonna post this, and she doesn't really care. And then there you guys see, she has the furry. I'm like, can I have the rest of the items at least? Because I didn't really care about the furry. And I can show you in the photos that the furry was there. And I'm like, why not DJ though? And yeah, so she doesn't want to give back the DJ, but she will trade the rest of the items. Don't you guys see what I mean? Because I mean, she said that she wasn't scamming at all, but I mean, in my defense, we had agreed that it wasn't hers. It wasn't her. It wasn't a trade. It was just for her to see with her look. And she said she promises nothing will happen. She will give it back right after. And I'm like, oh, can I have the cuffs? And she's like, oh no, I'll get you other cuffs. She's like, I'm like, please, you got my DJ. You don't need those. I got so mad. I'm like, no, just give me the freaking DJ or a furry. I got so mad. So yeah, I'm just letting you guys watch this for a bit because I'm like, she kept saying, oh, I'll get you other things. I'm like, no. And yeah, she never ended up giving furry. So that's great. That was just amazing. And and I knew if I said that I wanted her pink cuffs, she'd say, oh, I can get you like another pair or something. And she honestly just made me super mad. I got really mad. So yeah, at this point I wasn't even upset anymore. I was just kind of really mad because she is she's actually a pretty, okay, so I'm not saying that she's smart, but she's smart on how she scams. But they were saying things like, oh, my buddy gave me this furry. I'm like, sure. I'm like, why can't you give me my DJ? That's called scamming, stuff like that. It's like, if you don't know finish this trade with me, then go offline. I'm like, okay, so you know you're kind of scamming me, and you're like, oh, just go offline. And then she gives me the rest of the items, and I'm like, all just a lie. So she gives me the rest of the items. And she said trade backs are always available if we end up doing the trade. And I'm like, okay, I want to trade back. So, firstly, it wasn't a full trade. She didn't give furry. She didn't do anything. And I asked her for a trade back because that wasn't the deal. She said she'd give me all like the items, but just the big ones first. So yeah. I'm gonna see what more proof I have in my Jags. So yeah, bye guys. Okay, so for those of you that didn't really understand how to scam, I'm just going to like summarize kind of the story. So if you understand, you don't have to watch this part. But if you didn't understand, then you can just stay here. So I'm explaining. But basically what happened is someone offered me this really big trade. And I said, ooh, can I think about it? I mean, it's a nice trade. I think it'd be a nice trade. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. So a little while later, they're like, oh my god, I really want to try DJ because I have my entire look planned out. I'm so excited to get it. And I'm like, oh, well, sorry, I have trust issues. I can't really trust people with my DJ, especially not people that I've just met. And actually, I was stupid enough to actually fall into that trap. So eventually she persuaded me enough, and I'm like, you know, fine. So she called over her best friend, that's what she said. And her best friend watched and also recorded. And so what happened is we did the trade, and when we were gonna trade back, she logged off, and then she said, oh, I just crashed, and then I'm like, okay, can we trade back now? And he was saying like, oh, I can't trade you, it's not letting me. So then she refreshed, and then she could trade me again. And she's like, no, I'm like, look, if you're actually gonna just take my DJ, can I at least like have the rest of the items? And we had agreed on trade backs if we did the trade. And she's like, oh, sure, but she didn't add furry arm cuffs, which was part of the trade. So I'm like, can you just add furry? And she's like, oh, I'll get you like anything you want. And I'm like, no, can I just have my DJ or furry, please? And she's like, no, and stuff like that. And then eventually I ended up doing like the rest of it, but without the furry. And then I asked for a trade back because we had agreed on trade backs if we ever did a final trade or not, which for some reason we apparently did. But the reason I wanted to do the rest of the items is because I wanted to see if she was actually scamming me. So she did the rest of the items. I'm like, okay, we trade back now, please. It's my DJ. We had agreed on trade backs firstly. And she's like, oh, I'll think about it. And she doesn't even want to trade it back anymore. So, yeah, if you guys don't understand, just tell me. And I'll try do it again. Because if you're in trade backs and then you don't trade back, that is called scamming. If I had a deal with her that she would give it back right after, that would be scamming. And she says that just because, she's like, oh, I didn't unfriend you, how does that mean I'm scamming you? I'm like, just because you didn't unfriend me doesn't mean you didn't scam me. So yeah, hope you guys can report them.